Welcome to today's episode of Buildings Hub Live, where we spotlight the changemakers and technologies leading the charge to electrify our built environment. On our podcast, we tackle the issues facing building decarbonization, from space heating to electric cooking to building codes and beyond. On this episode, we'll chat with Rose Steffens-Booker, Managing Director of Programs and Partnerships at the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and Tony Sirna, Senior Policy Lead for Buildings at Evergreen Action. What can we learn from federal and state action on buildings this year? What can we expect for 2025? Stay tuned to find out. Here's your host, Atlas Public Policy Analyst, Stephen Naimoli.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 18th episode of Buildings Hub Live. My name is Stephen Naimoli, Policy Analyst at Atlas Public Policy, and I have the distinct pleasure of being your host today. For today's episode, we'll be taking a look back at 2024. What came out of the federal and state governments on buildings? What does it mean for 2025? Stay with us to find out. Before we jump into our discussion today, a quick note on Buildings Hub. Here at Atlas, we manage a one-stop shop data analysis tool for building sector electrification called Buildings Hub. If you're interested in heat pump market data, state buildings policies and funding programs, current makeup of the US housing stock, federal grants, and crisply designed dashboards, then we've got you covered. We're rolling out a data story soon looking at legislatures in the Midwest, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff planned for 2025. We encourage you to register for our platform and check out our data features. We'd love to have you join the Buildings Hub community. As for this episode, we're currently live on YouTube and LinkedIn. We encourage our audience to send us your questions via the Q&A portal on our YouTube live stream, and we will work them into the discussion. We look forward to hearing from you throughout the episode. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our special guests today. We are joined by Rose Steffens-Booker from the Building Decarbonization Coalition and Tony Sirna from Evergreen Action. Rose and Tony, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Well, we've got lots to cover in only half an hour, so let's get right to it. First, just to start off, I want to ask you both to share just a little bit about your organization and your role at the organization. Rose, let's start with you.
Yeah. Again, Stephen, thank you so much for having me. My name is Rose Steffens-Booker. I'm the Managing Director of Programs and Partnerships at the Building Decarbonization Coalition, or BDC for short. BDC aligns key stakeholders to transform the nation's buildings through clean energy using policy, research, market development, and public engagement. In my role in particular, I have the privilege of leading a unique department that includes teams driving both the push and the pull of the building decarbonization movement across the public and private sectors. This work leans heavily on maintaining relationships with manufacturers and retailers while supporting the methodical but very slow churn of state policy development. I'm focused on bridging the public and private sectors to accelerate market transformation, create jobs, and make clean energy solutions an easy and obvious choice for all Americans.
That's great. Thank you so much. Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Tony Sirna from Evergreen Action. I'm our Senior Policy Lead for Buildings. And Evergreen Action works nationally to enact policies to defeat climate change while making people's lives better. We're primarily a policy shop, and we've been working since 2020 to enact a comprehensive climate plan and make sure it's well implemented. And now we're working to defend that progress and move it forward in the states. And so I coordinate all of Evergreen's work on building decarbonization, electrification, and efficiency, and also focus on housing and affordability issues, both federally and in the states. And I also work with federal electrification policy coalitions to help coordinate work across organizations across the country. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. It's great to have both of you. I really appreciate the work that you do. Tony, let's start with you. I want to talk a little bit about what major developments came out of the federal government in 2024, and what do they tell us about the priorities of Congress and the executive branch?
Great question, Stephen. I would say over the last 4 years, the climate movement and the Biden administration have been focused on solving both the climate crisis and the growing affordability crisis that we're seeing in our country. High housing costs, energy costs are forcing families to make impossible choices between everyday necessities like food and healthcare. Many homes are inefficient, unhealthy, and costly to maintain, and this exacerbates financial strain and leaves families vulnerable to rising energy prices and climate impacts. Some people must literally choose between heating and eating, and that's just an untenable and unacceptable situation. That's why the focus has been on solving the climate crisis and the affordability crisis together by making it cheaper and easier to decarbonize our homes, to save people money, and improve their health and reduce climate pollution. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022, that included programs to make it cheaper and easier for people to upgrade their homes, to be cleaner and more energy efficient. So let me give you 3 or 4 examples from that program. First, there were the home energy rebates and tax credits. These help people to upgrade their homes to be more efficient and electric by providing funding for heat pump water heaters, etc. In 2023, over 2 million people took advantage of those tax credits, and more, I'm sure in 2024, we're going to see those numbers go up. Now we're seeing the home energy rebates, which are upfront rebates for low and middle income households. We have 11 states that have started their program. Another 19 have been approved, and the rest of the states are going to be getting their applications in by early in 2025. So we're starting to see all those programs implemented, getting them up to speed. Second, the federal government's been helping states upgrade their building codes. These building codes mean houses are going to be built to a higher standard, more energy efficient, and those changes are going to save families up to $500 a year in utility bills, even after you factor in the additional upfront cost of building to those higher standards. We've also seen billions of dollars go out in grant funding to cities, states, community organizations for equitable and affordable building decarbonization. And then even beyond the Inflation Reduction Act, we've seen the Department of Energy updating energy efficiency standards for appliances like furnaces, water heaters, clothes dryers, dishwashers, washing machines. Those updated appliance standards are saving people over $100 a year on their utility bills. But given the divided Congress, we haven't seen a lot of new policy enacted into law in 2024, but we have seen a number of bills that are really innovative and going along exciting routes. So we've seen bills looking at indoor air quality in schools to improve the conditions of our students, making sure that they're getting the best quality air, which often means decarbonizing those buildings. We're seeing bills that would look at massive investments into public and affordable housing to both increase the availability of housing and making sure that it's targeted towards our lowest income, most vulnerable families and households. And one of my favorites, during the COVID relief money, the state of Pennsylvania took some of that money and dedicated it to whole home repair programs, which helped low and middle income households make their homes safer and more energy efficient. Now there's a bill in Congress that would take that same concept and make it a national program. So we're seeing a lot of that focus on affordability, helping people upgrade their homes so that everyone can afford to live in homes that are healthier, safer, more comfortable, more energy efficient, more resilient, all while saving money on their utility bills. And of course, those policies also reduce climate pollution, support good paying careers, and build thriving, equitable communities that can ensure a better future for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, Tony. There are a lot of things that I want to talk more about, but we don't have a whole lot of time. So I just want to say that I think the point that you raised about whole home repair is really important. We've been seeing a lot in our work and hearing a lot from people, the importance of oftentimes, before we can make electrification happen, we have to address some of these more foundational, repair issues or, water, like mold management or water mitigation, things like that. And so that's really, really, that's exciting. And I hope to see, kind of those sorts of things move forward.
Yeah, we've got hundreds of millions of homes in this country, and all of them are a unique situation. People need to upgrade those homes. They need insulation. They need to remove lead pipes. Like you say, mold remediation. Those are all keys, things that you want to do before you can, or at the same time that you're upgrading their efficiency in terms of electrification of your appliances.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. I want to come back to you, Tony, in just a second. But sure. Rose, I want to turn to you and ask kind of a similar question about states. What are some of the themes that you saw from your engagement with, let's start with state legislatures this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year we saw building decarbonization legislation span a wide range of themes. Some of the standout trends that we saw were thermal energy networks, goal setting, but let me maybe start with those two. With thermal energy networks, this category really took off. 10% of all building decarbonization legislation focused on enabling and funding pilot projects. These networks really offer exciting opportunities to decarb entire neighborhoods, creating well-paying jobs and really uniting stakeholders from across the political spectrum. There are very resonant bipartisan themes here that we hope to take into the 2025 year. For goal setting, states have been setting ambitious targets like heat pump sales goals to lay the groundwork for significant changes. So some states are emerging as leaders. For example, Maryland and California are exploring zero emission standards, while states like Massachusetts are evaluating clean heat standards. On the other hand, a few states have lagged, due to a few legal challenges or slow political momentum. But overall, the momentum is undeniable.
That is great. That's really exciting to hear. I think thermal energy networks are really kind of taken off as a topic. I think lately we've been hearing, a lot of excitement about it. So that's I'm heartened, but also not. I guess it makes sense that we're seeing a lot of that coming out of the states and these pilot projects.
Yeah, we had over 130 pilots kind of launch in the legislative session this year. And so we are really proud of that progress and really look forward to carrying that momentum into the new year.
That's great. I also want to shout out your organization did in the midst of all the Spotify Wrapped, Apple Music Replay stuff, you did a 2024 Wrapped for buildings, which I thought was really fun. So I encourage our audience to check that out.
Oh, thanks for the plug. We're really proud of that. And we try to do it every year, but this year we had so many things that we could have included in there. We just found ourselves shortening as opposed to elongating.
Yeah. So talked a little bit about state legislatures and bills that have been coming out. Have there been similar or different themes that have come out of state executive branches?
Yeah, that's a good segue. I mean, state executive offices have played a major role this year. They've been showcasing innovation in many areas. A few come to mind, like goal setting, for example, even in the legislature. We've also seen it on the executive side. NESCOM, the Northeast States for Coordinated Air Use Management, released a landmark MOU with aggressive heat pump adoption targets. It's a model, it's a good model that we could really see catch on across other regions. The zero emission standards, Maryland again set that pace by advancing this policy alongside NESCOM's model rule. And even with workforce development, states like Colorado are getting creative. They're offering programs like OEM training to grow their clean energy workforce. Meanwhile, the New England heat pump accelerator stood out for pairing education with midstream incentives. And then finally, as Tony gave a wonderful overview, just IRA rebates. A significant focus this year was on building programs at the state level for implementation in the upcoming years. So the Inflation Reduction Act rebates are going to effectively ensure that states can maximize the federal resources that have already been put out there, potentially or additionally in administrative funds, but any potential funds that come after that.
Great. We've talked a little bit so far with both of you about new developments, trends that we've seen, but I'm curious. Sometimes we can never really kind of predict what's going to come throughout the year. So I'm curious, what surprised you in buildings policies this year? Tony, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I'd say one of the biggest surprises for me is or pleasant surprises, just how much progress we've made, especially in terms of policy innovation. There's been a lot of great things, as Rose was talking about, in terms of thermal energy networks and clean heat standards. I'm really pleased at how much the technology is moving forward. I feel like we're largely ready with the products that we need to help decarbonize a lot of different facilities, or they're in the pipeline. I mean, there's still innovation that can happen that's going to make things better. We're going to look back in 10 years and be so excited by the things that we have in place in 10 years. But there's still that gap with affordability, and that means that there's still work to be done on workforce training, upgrading our electric grid, et cetera. As Rose mentioned, Maryland has been taking the lead on building decarb, and that's been really exciting to see. Often we think of states like California and New York, but it's great to see Maryland really stepping out and doing a great policy innovations there. And then I've really noticed this big shift where I feel like on the affordability front, people have woken up to the housing crisis that we're in, recognize the affordability crisis that people are facing, and are trying to address both the housing scarcity issue, housing affordability issue, and then trying to see the intersection of that with the utility energy burden questions, and how do we help people save money on their utility bills. And I see that in state after state looking at those issues.
That's great. Rose, we'll turn to you.
Yeah, I'll start with just kind of like my perspective as just an ordinary consumer. I mean, I got into heat pumps almost 15 years ago, and that was just like this product category that you only saw online with a select amount of contractors that even knew what I was talking about. And now we see it in retail. We see it as part of the sales journey. And consumers, my neighbors, your neighbors, we're bringing this terminology to the sales journey so that it can be part of the conversation. And so I'm really proud of the workforce as it stands today, meeting the demand that is at the ground right now. And I really think that is just an opportunity to grow and to boost, because we're all, for renters and homeowners, we will all come to a place or a moment of our lives where something stops working. And when it's broken, we want to be informed with that decision making and that sales journey to either inform a property owner or inform our own decision making as homeowners. So I was really surprised. I continue to be surprised and inspired by that. I think another thing that's just kind of delighted me is the explosion of the interest in thermal energy networks. These projects now represent about 10% of decarbonization legislation in 2024. It's just incredible to see. And why is this such a big deal? Thermal energy networks can transform entire neighborhoods. We're no longer talking house by house. We're talking neighborhood by neighborhood. We're talking about the creation of quality jobs. And we're talking about this opportunity to serve in a bipartisan manner to bring stakeholders and constituencies together. So I think that's just exciting on so many fronts. And I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in the 2025.
Well, that's a really nice segue, actually, because we've talked about things that happened in 2024, things that we're excited about, and then a lot has shifted this year, both in policy and in politics. Thinking also about the elections in November for Congress, for president, kind of up and down the ballot. So how do you think that these political developments, as well as the policy developments we've been talking about, will affect 2025? What does it mean for next year? Rose, why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Let me think. Well, the groundwork was laid this year, particularly in form of goal setting. And it's really set states up to be able to make those big moves politically in 2025. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the action. On the horizon, I see additional goal setting for states that are up and coming. And I also see some potential legal challenges continue to pop up with particular roadblocks. But states are really figuring out how to navigate that. Coalitions are helping. Organizations across the country at the state levels and the subnational levels are there to help reinforce the tremendous efforts behind our building decarbonization movement. And so I think, it's just about supporting state opportunities, enhancing education and awareness, building the workforce to be able to continue to meet the demand. All of these have political plays whether it comes to the programmatic design or really constituencies showing up at the ballot and voting on their behalf for, clean energy policy.
That sounds like a great 2025 to me. Tony, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say that in the elections obviously had a big impact. I think that people really still support clean energy and climate, but we did see that cost and inflation are really key to voters. And so in this next year, we're going to have to be working hard to defend the funding that's in the Inflation Reduction Act, make sure that those policies and programs that are making people's lives better get continued and aren't cut. And I think that's going to take all of us working hard on that. And so I want to encourage your viewers, manufacturers, installers, advocates to make their voices heard with their members of Congress, make sure we can defend those policies if they come up for a question there. And then I also see us doing a lot of work leveraging action in the states to make building decarb more effective, more affordable. I'm excited about, as Rose was talking about, thermal energy networks, neighborhood building decarbonization, where the utilities can coordinate to upgrade an entire community to clean heating systems all at once. I'm excited about rate reform. That's something that states really need to look at, is how do we set fair prices to make it affordable for people to heat their homes with clean electricity? And then that's going to tie into this bigger question of what's the future of the gas distribution system in our country? As people electrify, as they get onto cleaner heating systems, upgrade their homes, people are going to leave the gas system. And how are we going to still afford that? What kind of stranded assets are we going to be looking at? And how much money should we be investing now into those systems? And instead, how much money should be invested into those thermal energy networks, into neighborhood building decarbonization, so that we can upgrade people's homes in a planned, coordinated way? And so I'm really excited about those kinds of things, because if we do this right, then we're going to create a place where people can afford to live in those healthier, safer, more comfortable, more energy efficient homes. They're going to save money on their utility bills. We're going to reduce emissions. We're going to create good jobs, and we're going to support the health and well-being of communities and ensure a better future for everyone. So we really need, I'm really excited about all the work that we can be doing in 2025. And I see a lot of movement possible in a lot of different states.
That's great. It really sounds like from both of you, there's a lot of really rich stuff to dig into for next year, things that people, and kind of across the economy can do, from consumers to manufacturers to policymakers to kind of, everyone to sort of pitch in to realize the benefits of beneficial electrification and kind of reduce carbon while also reducing cost. I think that's a really, really important part. I think, Tony, as you kind of highlighted that connection between affordability and building decarbonization, making it more achievable, making sure that it's equitable. We're not, leaving people behind. We're not ensuring a multi-tier kind of system there, I think is really, really key. So I appreciate both of you, sharing your thoughts on that. Just to end, I always like to do a little lightning round, a little quick thoughts. So for both of you, please describe your outlook for building decarbonization in 2025 and perhaps beyond in 5 words or less. Rose, let's start with you.
I was thinking about this too. I don't know if I have it in 5 words or less, or maybe I have 3 different phrases in 5 words or less. One is to keep an eye on leadership states. Mm-hmm. Another is don't underestimate state opportunities. And my final is, and this is probably more for our coalition folks really integrated in the space, don't sleep on public-private partnerships and the opportunities that could really come out of building that bridge for engagement, connecting industry market transformation with state programmatic policy requirements and needs to get this thing continuing to build in the momentum. So that was not 5 words or less. Mm-hmm. It was a little verbose. I'm going to apologize for that. But that's super hard, Stephen.
I think we can excuse that.
Thank you.
I'll exercise my my privilege as the host to say that's okay. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to summarize the whole building decarb effort into 5 words or less. My best attempt at that is, obviously affordability. I've been hitting that point. And then, federal defense and state progress. Like that's what I look for in 2025 is, affordability, defense, progress. We're going to be doing all of those things. And I think excited about that.
Great. I think a big theme that has been coming up, with all of this discussion is, even though we kind of split up the discussion between federal and state, obviously there is, a very complex relationship there, and it'll be really important to see that interaction between federal and state, not only through things like the home energy rebates, but also through, partnerships, federal-state partnerships, state-to-state partnerships, all kinds of different opportunities there, which we really are hoping that we'll be able to push for more continued progress, continued success there. Well, thanks to both of you so much for being with us. It's a really great way to wrap up our year. I really appreciate both of your work and the work that your organizations do, as well as all the other excellent groups in these coalitions and doing all this work. So it's a privilege to have you here and chat with you about the end of the year.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for having us. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will our entire decarb movement be built in a day as well. And so, I would like to stress to everyone to take this holiday break to rest, recuperate, and let's put our working hats back on in 2025, because we got to dig deep. We got some work to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. It's been great to be here. Great to be with your audience. I love to be on the Building Hub. And like Rose said, there's going to be plenty of exciting work for us to do next year. So take a break, take a breath, and get ready to rock next year.
Yeah. And thanks to our audience for joining us. You'll be able to find a recording of this episode and any of our past episodes anywhere you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and we'll have the videos archived on YouTube as well. Check out atlasbuildingshub.com to read our digests and data stories, to join our community. Stay tuned for a new episode of Buildings Hub Live in the new year, and happy holidays to everyone. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Buildings Hub Live. You can listen to this episode and all other installments in our podcast on the Atlas YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you're interested in additional content, check out our data, articles, and dashboards on Buildings Hub at atlasbuildingshub.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again soon.